I mean, I guess we can look at some of this gameplay footage. This first bit is from IGN. Let's see. Again, my stance has been, I'm not a mech fan. I just have never been into mech games, but that's because I've never really had a reason to try them and I've never been interested. But I am, for the first time, interested in this game. But I'm not assuming it's going to be the greatest game ever made because I just don't have any bias. I don't have a horse in the race. But I would love to get excited for this if they show some gameplay that like really blows me away. So let's see what they brought to the table with these previews.
We're close to Rubicon. Wake the dog up.
Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon is a game that marks several returns for From Software. It's a return to the series that they built the majority of the foundation of their legacy off of. A return to a series that they've not touched since 2013. And a return to a genre that isn't anything remotely close to it.
And I have to say, 10 years after the last game they did in this franchise, I can understand why fans of this franchise are so pumped. I totally get it. Like 10 years after the fact, ooh, baby. It would be like me if I found out that Rockstar was making a Bully 2. Like, that's the level of excitement and hype.
I got to play through the entirety of the first chapter of AC6, and if initial impressions are anything to go off of, it's a return that's going to be triumphant.
You gotta be careful saying anything other than very positive. I'll tell you what.
Time to fly, 61.
My experience with Souls-likes is vast, but my time...
I mean, I just like going back to your comment, Trouble, where you were like, it looks like what did you say? It looks like an awkward or a PS3 awkward mech game. I'm sure it'll be fluid. It's gonna play really, really well. But it's like I said back in the day with with like Hogwarts Legacy and some of these other games. If you're really stoked on a game, that's awesome, and I'm excited for you to be excited. That's fantastic. Thank you, Fantasy Files, as well. I did get your email, by the way. I haven't gone through. I have like 10 emails I have to respond to, so I'm getting to it. Don't worry. But you can be excited for it, but when you ignore or deny what is clearly the case, you lose all credibility, right? It's the reason why I really admired that guy. I wonder if he's in my like little sub. Yeah, New World. This guy. We reacted to his Starfield video where he said that he actually thought that no vehicles and no rovers and stuff in the game was a good thing. And I was like, that's a weird take. I'll hear you out. And to his credit, he was willing to acknowledge some of the issues present with Starfield, some of the reasons why you could be concerned. And he just came to a different conclusion than I can. And I can totally respect it. What I don't respect is when people are just outright denying or ignoring reality to try and protect this precious thing that they care about for whatever reason. It's the same thing that like super crazy people in cults do. I'm not farting, that's a Red Bull. Where they're so far down the rabbit hole, they can't admit any concerning stuff. Like if you're in Scientology and you don't want to acknowledge, hey, this whole thing's kind of crazy. Like, it's weird that you have to spend $500,000 to officially become like OT3 to find out what your religion actually teaches. That's a little messed up that it's gatekept with so much money, right? Like, can we accept that? Can we agree on that? And when you're in a cult, you can't acknowledge that because your blinders go on. You get stupid. Like, it turns you stupid. And even though they're really smart people, it puts the blinders on and they're conditioned to not recognize that stuff. And they just shut it down because doubt is not allowed. And, it's true of even a lot of like crazy hardcore beliefs, whether it's politics or religion. If you can't doubt something, you're in trouble because you can't think critically. You won't find the truth that way. And in this case, if you cannot acknowledge that like these trees look like shit, I don't know how to help you. Okay. But the point is, Armored Core is not a game based on the fidelity of their trees. No one really cares. Like FromSoft has never had crazy high fidelity games. They've had games with phenomenal gameplay design, and that's what makes them stand out. However, when you deny something as simple as like the quality of the trees or the look of the trees, I don't take you seriously anymore. Even if you're making really good points with regard to the gameplay, because you ignored reality over here, I just can't take you seriously. So I think it's important that we be level-headed and honest about the whole game, not just looking at the parts that we think showcase our opinion better.
With the Armored Core series is admittedly limited. I've played the first couple of missions of For Answer, but very little beyond that. Still, given that lack of experience, one of the things that stuck out to me when I first started playing Armored Core 6 was how easy it was to pick up and play. Your 2 arm weapons are mapped to the left and right triggers, your 2 shoulder weapons are mapped to the bumpers, X jumps, square does a quick dodge, clicking in the right stick changes your targeting mode to lock on, and clicking in the left stick engages your assault boost that basically acts like a sprint. If you've played a third-person shooter before, Armored Core 6 should feel very familiar, albeit much heavier and more boosty. This is fortunate because,
Oh my god, he said boosty.
in typical FromSoft fashion, Armored Core 6 put my skills to the test right out of the gate. The first boss fight against an AH-12HC helicopter was a real sink-or-swim moment, one that demanded I use every tool at my disposal, from my rifle, to my energy sword, to my missiles, to my quick dodges, to my assault boost, and my ability to manage my energy output properly so I didn't find myself unable to dodge the boss's barrage of missiles.
One of the things I'm impressed with just looking at this gameplay is that they seem to have adapted like a wider field of view and then also a camera that adapts and pulls back a little more. Because one of my, the biggest problems with Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, Sekiro even had this problem, and Elden Ring had it too, is with really big enemies, the camera freaks out. Like it's really hard to figure out what's going on because you'll be focused on like the foot and you can't see anything that's happening anywhere else. So you get stomped on by an arm smash that you literally could not see because you were closer to their feet or something. So these games have always struggled with big enemies and big bosses, and it seems so far in the gameplay we're seeing right now that they fixed that. I haven't seen anything where it's like, oh, that looks unfair. It actually looks like they managed to refine that. So that's tremendous.
It was also a great introduction to the new stagger system, which encourages you to push the action and be aggressive in order to build a stagger meter that will briefly stun a large enemy once it's full, making every shot against them while staggered a direct hit that deals much more damage. Armored Core 6 maintains the mission structure of previous games, with every chapter coming with its own collection of main missions that progress the story, and side missions that provide you with an opportunity to earn some extra cash to spend on upgrading your mech. Both mission varieties impress me. The side missions offer up a wide variety of objectives that force me to take different combat approaches each time, like a mission that required me to destroy a series of transport helicopters in a limited amount of time, while also desperately trying to avoid a high-powered enemy AC that was trained to kill me on sight. The main missions, on the other hand, were lengthy, multi-part engagements that were almost always punctuated by a memorable boss fight. As an example, let me tell you about this Strider mission that I've been dying to talk about. It began with me on the surface of Rubicon in the middle of a dust storm with the mission objective of defeating a Strider. Now, I don't know what a Strider is, so I just move forward and start to see way off in the distance the silhouette of what almost looks like a giant oil platform structure. As I move towards it, fighting some weak enemies along the way, all of a sudden I'm shot by a giant laser coming from the direction of that giant structure. A bit frazzled, I look a bit closer and realize, yeah, that's not an oil platform. That giant 40-story tall structure is the Strider that I'm being paid to destroy. What follows is an incredible sequence where I have to methodically make my way to the top of the Strider by first taking out its legs, destroying some generators, and hopping all across its side, until eventually I'm in a boss battle with that eye that's been continuously making my life a living hell with its giant laser. After finally bringing it down, I've got to do a dramatic leap to avoid getting caught up in the explosion, and can turn around to watch my handiwork as the mechanized giant crumples to the ground.
Now that gets me interested. That spectacle, that scope, that scale, that gets me excited. I'm willing to sacrifice things like graphical fidelity and stuff if the scale is on that level. That's tremendous. I love that. That's pretty badass. Okay. See, this is one of those things where it's like, I may not be sold on Monday on a game. The hope with somebody who's skeptical and is actually a skeptic and not like a cynic is that as new evidence or new pieces of the puzzle come in and you can evaluate them, your opinion can shift. And in this case, something like this that looks this badass weighs that scale a little more, or even a lot more, to the point where I'm like, okay, now I'm interested. This looks badass. But going off of the information I had on Monday, I wasn't sold. I just wasn't that interested in it. But this gets me really interested, especially if in previews they're showing something like this that's this crazy in scope. I can only imagine they're going to have a lot of other big stuff later on in the game, which this kind of thing I love. I love huge set pieces that are crazy cinematic and wild, where you're like, I don't know how they possibly got that working. It's basically the only reason I didn't give that Horizon Forbidden West DLC, the Burning Shores DLC, why I didn't give it like a 6 out of 10. It was just because that final encounter with the boss that you fight at the end of it, I guess I'll avoid big spoilers even though it's on the box art. That final boss fight is so great, it basically saves the whole DLC. It's like worth $20 in and of itself.
This moment sold me on Armored Core 6. It was also the moment I decided that this was a series I needed to dust off my PS3 for and at least go back and play the 4th and 5th gen versions of. In another mission, appropriately titled Operation Wall Climber, I was presented with a wide open combat arena featuring a giant wall lined with damaging turrets that made any straightforward frontal approach ill-advised, to say the least. Half of the challenge of getting through the level was charting the right path forward and weaving through cannon shots until I finally made it to the wall. And then I could hop up and systematically take out each of the turrets before dealing with the rest of the fight down below. And this mission really exemplifies what I'm most excited about for Armored Core 6. It's a game with an open-ended combat design that truly allows you to come up with your own solutions to the problems a mission's design lays out. Weaving through cannon fire and making my way up the wall was the solution that I arrived at, but I also could have equipped a long-range rifle and tried to take out the turrets from a distance. Other players will likely come up with their own solutions based on how they equip their mech. Even in just Chapter 1, there was already a ton of flexibility in how to approach a given combat scenario. And given the fact that there will be more weapons and parts unlocked later on, I'm very excited to see what else From Software has in store as the player's toolbox increases as the game progresses. My demo ended with an exhilarating boss fight against an enemy mech that did the classic mecha anime thing of spamming literally hundreds of heat-seeking missiles at once. This was a fight that took many attempts, with me trying out numerous different build types before arriving at a double rocket launcher build that got me the damage I needed to just barely bring him down before he finished me off. Armored Core 6 feels like a new beginning for this storied franchise, one that's benefited from the success and experience gained from Software's other titles, but one that is still true to the original vision of the series. I can't wait to see what lies beyond Chapter 1 when Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon releases on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC on August 25th.
Okay. Yeah, just the big, crazy scale and scope of like this, I can understand why he would say that this sold him on the game. And I think like this is more interesting to me than like, oh, you go through here, you fight waves of little turrets on a wall. Like, that's not really interesting to me. But big, like if I'm fighting for or to get to something crazy in scope and scale like this, that makes all of that worth it. As for the feeling, I've seen not just Treble say it, but I've seen a lot of people mention it. Like, it feels like a PS3 game. I think the reason it feels like that is because the PS3 gen is the last time these games were made. Like, they just haven't been attempted by any huge studios, as far as I'm aware, like this in the PS4 gen or certainly the PS5 gen so far. Maybe there's some more niche stuff by other developers in the like on PS4 or out of Japan. There's some people putting games like this together, but I just don't think that these types of games have been designed, because the meta for the PS4 gen very quickly became like third-person adventure games, and that was everywhere. And you know, in 10-15 years, we're probably going to look back at third-person adventure games and be like, oh my god, that looks so outdated compared to what we have now. Now everything is all about, I don't know, mech games, or it's all about X, Y, or Z. Like, who knows where we'll be in 10 years. But that's, I mean, it's frankly probably why it feels like a PS3 game, and it's because, well, during the PS3 gen, we had a lot of games with this type of movement, this type of combat, this type of gameplay. And so, yeah, it does feel, it feels old school, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. He took my thing.